You do not usually realize a business is in trouble when it starts. You realize it when the leads get more expensive, clients get harder to manage, you cannot switch off, and even though revenue is going up, your business feels heavier instead of stronger. Those are not small frustrations. They're usually early signs that something underneath the business is starting to break. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 signs your business may be closer to real trouble than you think, but each one is actually telling you what to fix now before the problem gets more expensive. I'm Ido Leatherman. Over the past 20 years, I've built more than 15 businesses, and the reason I can talk about this with conviction is not just because some of them worked, it's because many of them did not. The last 2 became #1 in their niche in the country, but the lessons that matter most came from the businesses that struggle, the ones that failed, and the moments that the warning signs were there before the collapse was obvious. I've seen these patterns in my own businesses, and I've seen them again and again in business owners who looked like they were growing, but were actually getting closer to a breaking point underneath. So if you listen and one of these signs feels a little bit too familiar, stay with me until the end, because the last one is the most often overlooked and usually the one that ends up costing the most. And if you want support identifying what's underneath it in your business, you can also book a call below. But let's start with sign number 1. You're paying more for leads but getting fewer or worse ones. You see the cost per lead going up, fewer people show up, sales calls get harder. So you do what most business owners do. You change campaigns, you tweak the landing page, you improve the webinar, you test a new offer, you add urgency, you try a different angle. Sometimes that gives you a small lift, then a few weeks later, the numbers start slipping again. And yes, sometimes this really is a marketing problem, but a lot of the time, it is not. A lot of the time, rising lead cost is a signal that something deeper has changed. Your market may be too small, your message may have lost its edge, your positioning may be weaker than it used to be, or trust may already be starting to fade. I learned this the hard way in my own businesses. We were selling a very specific niche inside the music world in Israel. At the beginning, it worked extremely well. The audience was clear, the message was sharp, the leads came in fast. I thought we had found something big, but after 2 years, everything got harder. Harder to generate leads, harder to get people into webinars, harder to get people into sales calls. Costs kept rising, and no matter how much effort we put into marketing, the decline kept coming back. What I understood too late was that the market was simply too small. We had saturated it, and inside the same niche, my positioning had also started to drift in a way that was hurting us. By the time I saw it clearly, we were already deep in the problem. And that is the mistake a lot of businesses make. They push harder on marketing before checking whether the market, the message, or the trust underneath has already changed. So here's the action step. Stop asking, how do I get more leads? Start asking, what changed underneath? Is this really a campaign problem, or is my audience just too small? Is my message worn out? Is my positioning weaker than it used to be? And has trust already started to erode? Because sometimes the problem is not how many people still see you, it's how many people still believe you. And when this starts happening, many business owners make the pressure even worse. They start saying yes to the wrong people just to keep the machine moving. Sign number 2 that your business might be failing is clients are dropping out, not paying, or becoming a constant headache. If you find yourself trying to justify why you should take a client even though something feels off, pay attention. That is usually not random. It's an early warning sign. I made this mistake for a long time. Sometimes it was survival. Sometimes I genuinely wanted to help. Sometimes I wanted to prove that I can help. So I said yes to people that the warning signs were already obvious. And every time I did it, it cost us. The sale process was usually harder from the start, more convincing, more resistance, more fear, more pressure to make it work. And later, inside delivery, the same pattern showed up again. Those clients would do less work, they would expect bigger results, they would avoid responsibility, they would disappear, delay payments, or create tension inside the team. And this is the part people underestimate. The wrong clients do not stay contained. They affect the team. They affect your energy. They affect other clients. And over time, they lower the standard of the whole business. At some point, I had to accept something simple. I'm not here to work with everyone. I'm here to help the right people build a real result and follow through. That is a very different standard. And here's the action step for this sign. A friend of mine uses a decision-making work frame I found really powerful. He calls it love, not fear. Before you say yes, ask yourself, is this decision coming From love or from fear? Am I saying yes because this is truly the right client for the business, or because I'm afraid to lose the sale or money or the opportunity? Then ask a second question. What is most likely to make this fail with this person? The real answer usually shows up immediately. And if your answer is fear, or failure points are already obvious, that's your warning sign. Sometimes the most professional thing you can say in a sales conversation is, I want to be honest with you. I'm not sure I'm the right person to help you right now. If you've ever signed a client and knew in your gut it was going to become a problem, you already know how real this is. And when this happens often enough, your business starts depending more and more on you to hold everything together. All right, sign number 3, every time you take a day off, you do it with anxiety and you keep checking your phone. You're on a day off or a vacation, you're with the family, but part of your attention is still in the business. You're supposed to be off, but you keep checking your phone to make sure nothing is going wrong. And sometimes something does go wrong, or maybe nothing breaks, but it does not get handled the way you would have handled it. So you tell yourself, this is why I always have to be there. But a lot of the times, that is not proof that you're essential. This is proof that the business still depends on you too much. Usually, the missing piece is not effort. It is clarity. There are no clear rules, no clear owners, no clear decision standards, no clear way for people to handle expected situations without bringing everything back to you. And I used to do this all the time. I gave people the feeling that I always knew best. I was always the one with the answer. And yes, that made people rely on me, but it did not help them think for themselves or make decisions with confidence. So instead of building autonomy, I built dependency, and that created bottlenecks in places that matter most. Contract did not get signed. Money did not get collected. Opportunities were not followed up on. Client and vendor issues were left too long, then came back bigger than they needed to be. If every important decision still needs to go through you, the business is not operating properly without you. It is still organized around you. So here is the action step. Write down exactly what are you afraid will happen when you're not there. Not vaguely, be specific. What deal are you afraid will stall? What money are you afraid will not get collected? What customer issue are you afraid will escalate? Then ask, is there a process for this? Is there a clear owner for this? Is there a decision rule for this? And start asking your team this question more often. What do you think is the right move here? And why? Because your job is not to make every decision yourself. Your job is to build a business that can keep moving when you're not in the room. Once the business depends on you too much, growth itself starts to feel dangerous. Because once the business depends on you too much, growth itself starts to feel dangerous. And that brings us to sign number 4. Revenue is going up, but the business is getting heavier, more expensive, and harder to run. This is one of the most dangerous signs because from the outside, it can look like growth, more revenue, more activity, maybe even more people. But underneath, the business is getting weaker, not stronger. Costs go up, complexity goes up, more layers get added, more systems, more management, more moving parts. And at the end of the month, you're working harder, carrying more stress, and keeping less money. That is not healthy scale. That is a business becoming harder to sustain. And I learned this in a very personal way. For years, I ran live cohort-based online programs, live teaching, live practice, very hands-on. Then at a certain point, I realized that a lot of what I was teaching repetitively could be turned into recorded content supported by mentors. In theory, that should have made the business lighter, but what happened instead was fear. What if quality drops? What if I'm not involved enough? What if something slips? What if the customer experience gets weaker instead of stronger? And that fear pushed me to overbuild. Too many support people, too much expensive tech, a platform that was far too big and complex for the actual stage of the business. Systems built to prevent every possible problem before the business had earned the right to carry that weight. So instead of creating more freedom, I created a business that was more expensive and more complicated to run. So much so that as it grew, I was actually making far less. That is one of the classic scaling mistakes. The mistake is not growth. The mistake is building the version of the business you imagine you will need one day before demand actually justifies it. There's a reason serious operators pay so much attention to margin. Without margin, growth does not make your business stronger. It makes it more fragile. So the action step here is simple. Before every expansion, ask, is demand clearly justifying this? Or am I building this just because I'm afraid of what might happen? And ask this too. Does this increase margin? Does it reduce pressure? Does it improve delivery in a way that clearly pays for itself? If not, slow down. If this feels familiar, write margin in the comments, because once you can name the pattern, you can start fixing it. Most businesses do not collapse at once. They get weaker while the owner keeps treating the visible symptoms and missing what the sign is actually pointing to. And by the time the problem is obvious, it is usually already costing money, energy, trust, or all three. So before you move on, write down the one sign that already feels most expensive in your business right now, and the one issue underneath it you know you cannot keep ignoring. If this helped you put words into something you've already been feeling in your business, subscribe. Because the next layer of this is understanding how to build a business that gets stronger as it grows, not harder to carry. And one of the biggest parts of this is pricing. Because if your pricing is wrong, a lot of these same problems keep coming back. Lead quality gets worse, pressure goes up, margin disappears, and growth becomes harder to sustain. So watch the pricing video next.